So welcome, everyone. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Because of Thanksgiving, we're able to welcome the Lavines to Cleveland. Adam and Aiko are parents to Ayano. Hopefully I pronounced everything right.
Your pronunciation is flawless.
Okay. And Ayano is a second year nursing neuroscience student and was working at the clinic during Thanksgiving. So it was awesome that the Lavines were able to spend their time in Cleveland. I don't know if you brought this challenging weather with you from Nevada, but
Specifically requested.
yeah, hopefully it'll warm up. But it's great to have you here. And actually, Adam was introduced to me by my colleague Sammy Williams. I mean, we love our community and family of entrepreneurs, which includes parents. So we were able to connect through Sammy, and we're looking for a time. I said, hey, when you're ever in Cleveland, we'd love to have you as part of
had a great Thanksgiving.
These sessions are moderated by students, and Salma, who's one of our Veale Snyder fellows, and is with us for the year, who will introduce yourself, will moderate the session. We've got a number of folks with us here in the room. We have a number of folks on Zoom, and if you're watching on LinkedIn Live, just put a question in the comment, and Britton and I will be monitoring that, and we can shoot that to you, Salma. So with that, Adam, welcome to ThinkBox in Case Western Reserve, and Salma, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'll introduce myself. So my name is Selma. I'm a junior. I'm studying computer science and minoring in astronomy. And I'm also a Veale Snyder Fellow. That's how I'm and I'll be your moderator for today's session. It's my first time. So so I thought like we should start first with a roundtable introduction so that we know like each other and everything.
Great.
So you can start if you want to.
Hi, I'm Britton. I'm the program manager for the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship and LaunchNet as a subdivision of that.
Great. You know me.
My name is Jasper Tenga, currently a full-time MBA student, first year, focusing on business analytics.
Where are you from?
I'm from Tanzania.
What do you hope to get out of this session today?
Learn more about Ethos, got into like the crypto space about beginning of 2022. It was such a bubble then, really, because of NFTs basically, but got into things like Ledger, I have one and stuff like that. So looking forward to hearing more about Ethos. And
Sure. Ask any questions you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
You guys have to introduce yourselves.
I got a very nice introduction. My name's Ayano and
What are you hoping to get out of this session?
Bitcoin.
Free Bitcoin.
I'm Aiko Lavine, I'm Adam's wife, and I'm a financial planner. And my interest these days is putting up international corporate structure and working in tax efficiencies. That's something that fascinates me, and we've been doing a lot of these corporate structuring in our background. So.
Hi, I'm Shami Williams. I work here at the university in the Central Alumni Relations and Development Division.
I'm Jaden Wyatt. I'm a senior studying accounting. Recently, been working on a startup here at ThinkBox called Search Out. We do a shopping website that's ad-free and learns users' preferences as they shop. So sitting in here to hear more about technology.
What do you hope to get out of today's session?
So like I said, I'm a business student, alongside my co-founders that are engineers. I'm the one that's in charge of, selling and fundraising. So I've learned a lot and gotten a lot of value from sitting in on conversations about, very technical spaces as someone who is in the business school, and try to continue to do that to keep myself up to speed.
I'm Jarvis. I'm a senior undergrad engineering student here, and I'm from a place called Macau. It's right next to Hong Kong. Lots of casinos here.
Nice. And what do you hope to get out of today's session?
I pay my tuition, so trying to learn as much as I can, and I think
I'll put value for your tuition dollar.
I think and crypto is kind of like getting back, especially yesterday Enron is coming back.
Yeah.
So That's crazy. Interesting, you know? That's it for me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mindy Veale. I'm with the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship. I work mostly with faculty interested in setting up their own company or spinning their technology out to market. I also we're early in the process of working with alumni founders to see what we can do to support their startups and their growth.
Nice. Good. Well, I'm Adam Lavine, and so thanks very much for letting me come here and the warm hospitality you've all shown us. So really appreciate that. And I just love always talking to, well, anybody pretty much, but younger entrepreneurs and, trying to understand what they're thinking, what they want to learn, how, if I can be helpful. So I always enjoy sessions like this. So I know Salma has put a lot of effort into a lot of very thoughtful questions. But if you have anything you want to cover specifically, feel free to just ask me. So, great.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, feel free like to interrupt at any moment and ask questions, but I can start with the first question, which is like, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? You have like worked in very diverse fields, like very diverse fields. And so like just tell us about like how you got like from a student in college into like where you are now, which is quite long.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I'll try and so I always liked creating things when I was very young. I would make animated movies, the stop motion, or make comics, or I always liked the act of creation. So then entrepreneurship felt like it was the ultimate act of creation because you're kind of creating something out of nothing. And Steve Jobs always talked about, reality distortion fields and being able to change reality to a way that you envisioned it, and then you sort of make reality sort of bend to your will and vision, and a company come from nothing. So it's really very, all you really need is a business card. You don't even need that anymore. You just need a LinkedIn profile. Just change your heading. And so I always found that really interesting. So my first project in college was animation software. It came from a 3D class we were taking, and we productized it, and we just made a company out of it. And we added more products to it, and that became basically a graphic software company. It was way back before Apple was cool. It was when Apple had like 3 or 4% market share, and we just specialized in that platform. And I learned then, make sure you support the mainstream devices if you're going to do something. But it was a good journey, and we did a lot with Apple. Apple is what it is today, so that was interesting. Met Steve Jobs, met all the old school Apple people. And one thing took away from Apple is never give up, because I remember Apple was, trading below its cash in the bank. It was just considered to be just done and dusted, and they just stuck with it and became what they are today, the most valuable company on earth. So I think there's a lesson in there, which is don't give up, because if you give up, you're done. If you give up, you're still in the game. So that wound up being bought by a public company, and then I went and got into doing mobile software, mobile content, and we built this whole elaborate system to do animated text messaging, and it wound up that the thing that was really valuable out of it was actually the ability to make screensavers and wallpapers for mobile devices. So my lesson in there was, just because you build a big technical platform doesn't mean it's actually valuable. It's sometimes the feature that people want doesn't have to cost a lot. And the other thing I took away from that venture was distribution. Distribution will always trump a better product. Like the thing that's in front of you, you buy, right? So that I did for quite a while, and it was actually a good. That was one where we also had some hardships, but we didn't give up like Apple, and then we made it through, and that became very profitable. And then after we did that for a while, I sort of did some investing and did some. And then my son came along, Shingo, and he wanted to start a company, so I started with him, and that turned into a crypto software wallet to do self-custody, and that one took off. It was at the right time, 1997, and became very popular. It was an easy way for people to interact with cryptos. We just tried to simplify it and make it accessible to people. And we wound up merging that with a public company, and that turned into a public crypto brokerage. Shingo's on the board. And what we learned there is make sure you have ethical management in place, because the CEO wound up losing customer funds and bankrupting the company. and we got out for all that big mess, but we learned a hard lesson there in terms of ethics and competency of management. And now we're rebuilding some that kind of company, but decentralized, so no one person can control it. We also, as a family, we do some nonprofit work, and so myself and my wife and my son have a family office where we do some investment and we do some nonprofit work.
That's a lot. Well. I wanted to also like talk about your current position at Emerald Ocean Ventures. I wanted to ask a little bit about like the vision and the investment strategy for that venture.
Quite honestly, it's trying to leverage our time and expertise more than our capital. So we try and get involved with ventures where we sometimes will apply capital, but we try and get involved with ventures where our time and involvement and connections can be more valuable than money we bring to the table. And so myself and my wife and my son all have different skill sets, and we try and apply those where we can really make a difference and, distort reality in the right ways. So it's a family office structure, and our vision is to really try and, make a difference where we can.
Okay. And also you were a CEO at Fun Mobility for a very long time, for like 16 years, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So with Fun Mobility achieving such a wide adoption, what are like some lessons from mobile engagement that you like still resonate with you today in like the tech industry?
I think fundamentally, when you look at businesses like that are consumer facing, it's more or less about traffic and conversion. So, you can kind of boil all businesses down to that. Do you have an audience, and can you convert them into a transaction that has value for your enterprise? So in that one, the traffic was really through mobile carriers, and we spent a long time building relationships with them. And it was funny how if you were, on like before there were all these smartphones, there were flip phones and candy bar phones, and so they only had like maybe 5 or 6 rows. So you really, really wanted to be above the fold. So when you opened the phone, the person didn't have to scroll down. So the top choice would get like 70% of the traffic. And the second choice would get like 20% of the traffic. And the third choice would get like 5% of the traffic. And then the other 17 places would get the remaining 5%. It was really very, very striking. Yeah. So it was all about placement, right, in that business. And so we worked very hard to try and get good placement. And then we do a ton of content deals. So we license content from, Marvel, Hello Kitty, Peanuts, all of them. And then the stuff that actually, so we did that to get in the door, so that, Verizon and AT&T that want to, promote our storefronts and such. But then the stuff that really sold was like the Hot Leafs and I Love Beer, and I licensed this like tattoo art from this guy. He did all the tattoo art for all these tattoo parlors nationwide, flaming skulls and all this crazy stuff that sold great. So the premium content just got us distribution, and also it was the worst term, so we didn't even want to sell it that much because like Marvel would be like Spider-Man is so great, you have to give us 80% or whatever, So it was a combination of like distribution, merchandising, and then tactical content deals to drive distribution.
Is that based on like your audience, like age or interests?
Sort of. It really, the customer for distribution was, it was amazing at the carriers because you'd have these people be in charge of the storefronts and merchandising, the apps basically. And then then they would they'd sort of give that role to sort of the intern turned permanent employee. So the people who actually controlled the distribution storefronts were very, very junior. And so you had to have content that sort of they liked, and then they would put you up top.
Okay.
It was very specific. It was like customer distribution marketing, really.
Okay. Any questions on Fun Mobility? No? Okay. I also wanted to ask another thing. So about Ethos. So what are like some potential, like what potential do you see in like blockchain and NFTs reshaping industries beyond like finance and art? Do you think they're kind of like outdated because AI is the new thing now, or like do you still think there's still a market for them?
I think there is, I think a lot of the potential for blockchain is being able to have digital dollars or asset, I should even say real world assets on chain. And that's very important for emerging economies who are challenged by inflation, but may not have access to dollar-backed assets. And so what blockchain does is it gives countries like that the ability for like payments and remittances and to hold assets in more stable currencies. And so we see like all the time, like we have an engineering team in Algeria, and they always want to get paid in Tether, which is dollar-backed stable crypto. And because it's just, they can't always get a bank account, and then if you want to send money to Algeria, you have to go through all these hoops. Whereas if you just send it through blockchain, you can pay anybody in the world instantly. And obviously, there's issues around that in terms of like money laundering and identity and stuff like that. But the problems they solve for a lot of people around the world, I think, are very, very significant. And they really open up access to a large audience that just didn't have access before. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And then I think you're going to also see under the current, the new administration coming in, you're going to see a lot of relaxing of what was previously a very regulatory focused group. And you're going to see a lot more, I think, around using crypto for payments here domestically. And, it's going to challenge the hegemony of like Visa, MasterCard, American Express that charge, 3% for a swipe and you can return anything. And that's going to really, I think, be the biggest challenge to the sort of credit card monopoly that you've seen in a generation. So that's going to be quite interesting.
And building on that, like what are some like emerging technologies or trends that are exciting to you the most?
I mean, when it comes to crypto, I'm really excited about dollar-backed stables because I think that it's basically programmable money, and that opens up a lot of really interesting. Because the thing about Bitcoin was you could basically send it peer-to-peer without any intermediary. That was the big trick, right? And then Ethereum built on that, basically attaching a scripting language to that, and then now you're seeing companies like Circle with USDC, basically, stable coins that you can kind of do anything with, and it's really, really interesting. And there has to be some sort of regulatory framework around that, but it's coming, and I think you're going to see very interesting applications emerge.
Yeah. No.
You go, no.
I mean, I can ask later. You just gave one point. Sorry.
So I have like another question that's a little bit like beyond business. So what are like some creative things that you like to do? And how do they like contribute to your success within your end?
Very important for entrepreneurs to play poker.
I mean, you are from Nevada.
Yeah. Well, yeah, just teach. There's so much like real life situations that are similar to poker. And someone's bluffing, overplaying their hand, or things like that. So I really do enjoy poker. But I also I enjoy. I had to put myself through college doing juggling, so I was a juggler, and so I think that just helped in terms of something different to put my mind on. And magic, I still like to do some magic, and so I always enjoyed that. And cooking, we cook a lot together. So
What kind of food?
everything, but anything, yeah. But I think Aiko made a wonderful Japanese dinner for us all a couple nights ago. And last night we grilled some steaks and broccoli. It was good. Ian was a great cook, So.
Would you say like you have a lot of time for like non-business stuff, or do you kind of incorporate it into your routine?
Yeah, well, the joke is if you want to be an entrepreneur, you only have to work half days and you get to choose which 12 hours it is. So, but yeah, I mean, these days for me, I have flexibility and pick and choose to do what I want to do. I think before it was more intense, I would say. But I think it's always important to have a balance, because once you burn yourself out, it's really hard to pull yourself back. And so you have to always have the balance, I think. And you know, personally for me, my kids growing up, I always, like I missed one big event because I went to this meeting that I was supposed to go to. I thought it'd be the Nothing Burger, and I missed, I think it was Aiko's graduation, you know, from grad school. I said, okay, I'm never gonna do that again. I'm always gonna prioritize my family stuff, and never regretted it, so.
And also like in the audience, there's a lot of people that are business related or like who are working on like their own startups or like some startup in general. So I was wondering if you have any advice for them, or any like emerging young entrepreneurs to navigate like the scene in today's world.
Well, it really depends on the person and what they want to do. Like, if they really want to start a company, then, you know, I would say make sure you're solving a real problem and you have like something that you can build some traction around. Doesn't matter if it's small, but it's something you can get traction points and that you're really solving something that's worth solving. And if you want to just, like, entrepreneurship doesn't just mean starting a company, right? You can be entrepreneurial in many things beyond just making money. And so I would really think about, well, do I want to be an entrepreneur because I want to make money? Or am I looking to make change of some kind somewhere? And understand really what your goals are and why you're doing what you're doing. Because the magic of life is you can do anything you want. You just have to say, this is what I'm doing, and go do it, right? So, but you have to be really sure that you decide that you're doing something that you want to be doing. I hope that's helpful.
And like, what is one mistake that you would say like to avoid?
I've made so many mistakes. I mean, every time I start a new company, I had a new set of mistakes I made. So that's one thing, just try not to make them again. But I would say, I mean, you know, my first one had too many people. You don't need as many people as you think. My second one, I think didn't have the right people. I missed some big deals because I had some incompetent people in the wrong spot. So like, make sure you have the right people in the right roles, not just because you like them. I mean, it's good that you like them, but that's kind of immaterial. Like, you want the right person in the right role, and definitely cost me big by doing that. And then the last one, make sure you're involved with people that are ethical and competent, and even if it's uncomfortable, make sure you're doing the right thing, you know, when it comes to those types of situations.
On like choosing the right people to work with, how would you define the right person to work with?
Competent.
Okay.
I mean, they have a skill set that they can actually do. Like, a lot of people put a label on themselves and then you're supposed to believe it, right? Whatever it is. Like, oh, I'm an accountant, I'm a lawyer. But then if you double click on, okay, what is their real skill set? What can they really bring to the table? It can be illuminating what they can and can't do. And sometimes like, it's hard to do that because you're sort of poking at somebody's identity and who they are, what they're capable of, right? So it's very uncomfortable. But the thing is, it will be much worse downstream than the, you know, discomfort of now if you have the wrong person in there.
And reflecting on your like very diverse career in very different fields, like what would you say like is one pivotal moment in your life that kind of shaped your journey?
I married my wife.
Oh.
Well, it was because it was like a foundation and a stability that I could build, like, no matter what happened, I had that, right? So everything else, then from there became a lot easier, not easier, but more, just like not as scary, I guess.
That's nice. That's a very nice answer.
I practiced it.
And also another thing I wanted to ask is like again, like I keep going back to like that your ventures are spanning a lot of different fields. How do you go about like identifying a certain like field or like a problem?
I think it was really opportunistic where just something would happen, like a confluence of events where there was an opportunity to commercialize something. That's really what it was. So it really was kind of opportunistic. So I guess it was just having an eye open for opportunities, you know, because you have to be lucky to have opportunities, but you also have to recognize that luck comes along. And so I think it was the ability to be opportunistic. And then I really think my skill set is kind of getting groups of people together and getting people to do things, that's really what I'm best at. And so, being able to assemble teams to kind of, get things done and then commercialize it. And I think also, like, I've always, I think, been focused on branding, like what, like naming and how does somebody perceive what you're doing, and positioning is really important. Because if you don't clearly position your product or service, and somebody just is gonna put it in a bucket in their mind that may or may not be, where you want it to be placed. So really trying to really think through documenting stuff. Like I'll do really sort of simple presentations. Okay, like this is what we're doing, this is what it's called, and the clarity of that. But it's really funny because like you can go, if you talk to some company and you ask the execs, you said, okay, well, so what do you do? You can get like 5 different answers from 5 different execs. And they go, why are you doing this? And then, so being able to answer those simple questions, I think really matter a lot, because then people can all, say the same thing and understand sort of clarity of purpose around a company or a product. And I think that's really, really important.
And also you mentored a lot of people, in very different ways as well. What's your like prime strategy for mentoring?
Try and help people like identify what they're really good at and develop that skill in them. So, trying to help like draw out people's abilities and you want people to be successful. So like, what is the best path? This person, like, not giving them a path, but helping them figure out what it is. I find that very, very gratifying. Like, if you can help someone else, be their best. That's, I think, a lot of the meaning that's, in life. So
Do you think like it's important to be like more well-rounded or specifically good at like one thing? Specifically?
depends on the person. Like if you're a heart surgeon, I'd say you want to do that. But I think for entrepreneurs, it's good to have like entrepreneurs in sales, it's good to have a understanding of lots of little things. Be able to do lots of other things well. So if you have more generalized job, basically like entrepreneurship or sales, then I think it's good to be generalized. If you're doing something more specific, I think it's good to have a specific set of skills. And especially these days, kind of where technology is going. Like we were having lunch and the waitress, she's actually doing data visualization. She's a senior doing data visualization. We were talking about that. And my advice to her was have a tool belt. So a set of tools you can use, you can bring to your organization that are like best practices, and they may or may not have it, right? And that your tool belt, just like if you're a plumber or a carpenter, same in AI, that you want to have a set of tools that you specialize in, right? And I think for those types of careers, you want to not just have a specialty, but have a specialty set of tools that you know can get the job done.
And one last question, I also wanted to ask, how do you prioritize your time and energy with so many interests and initiatives? I think this applies a little bit to me personally as well.
Yeah.
As a college student.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, where you guys are at a place like this, it's very intense. So you have to kind of it's really time management, right? And so like prioritizing the stuff that's most important and making sure the important stuff gets done. And, so I'm sure all of you are probably pretty good at that if you're in a place like this. I think when you get to be sort of getting older, then it's really you prioritize the things that are important to you and allocate your time. And also like you're diminishing energy as you get older. So you have to make sure you're like really picking the stuff that matters to you. But it really is, about what's important to you and making sure that you're spending time on the things that matter to you or matter to your goals.
Thank you. Well, I asked a lot of questions. A lot of them were kind of personal as well.
That's great. Thanks.
So feel free to ask any questions as well.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I might have to leave soon and go to work. So I know others have questions, but I'm just gonna dig in really so quick. So you talked about the CEO experience and you guys got out like as soon before like things got out of hand. How do you see like what were the ethical issues? Like were you able to spot them, or was it by chance that you left? And how do you see crypto not only crypto, let's go to the technology behind it, blockchain, enabling that transparency to be able to see like there's no fraud happening in the back end, how the money is being used effectively and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, on the first one, we saw through, it was like behavior really, and about how certain information was being handled. And also a lot of it was control issues, like how the money was controlled and who had basically control over it. And we actually raised some flares about it. We almost wrote a letter to the board and organized shareholders, and we didn't because we said, oh, you might screw up a financing, please don't. So we didn't. And we really regretted that because maybe we set off a flare earlier, things might have been different. So I think it's like not being afraid to take the steps that you know you should, just because somebody asked you not to, you know? And then I think in terms of transparency, I mean, the thing is about tech, I mean, yes, blockchain in theory is good for transparency, but there's a lot of concerns about people, you know, being able to sort of like man in the middle attacks where they make you think you're seeing a chain that's not actually what you're seeing. So, you know, like I think really knowing about data integrity and transparency is hard in any industry these days. So it really is going to boil down to the people and the controls, right? And the tech doesn't really matter in a sense. So I wouldn't like think, oh, somehow blockchain is like this magical technology that's more transparent than everything else. It isn't. It's just like anything else came before it. It's, you know, it's not even that new tech particularly. Like one of Shinga, my son's advisors at Brown, he'd been doing the same thing for like 40 years, distributed computing, and then all of a sudden it like has a new name on it, and it's, you know, everybody's like, it's a new info thing, you know. So I mean, same with AI at some level. But I worked in the AI lab when I was your age, right? So it was like, and everybody had this, like saw Samuel's checkers beat somebody at, you know, checkers, and like, oh my God, the computer's taking over, you know. And so I think it really, you have to always look at the people and the controls like behind any business, and then also like really understand that whatever data you're looking at, what was the source of that? Where did that data come from? You know, because that if you're basing a lot of assumptions and risks around data, you have to really know the sources, like really know the sources. And so that's my take on that.
And from there, you brought up something concerning like the people, and you guys talked about hiring earlier. Whenever you're starting out, especially as an entrepreneur, you don't have, let's say, the capital to hire as many people. With some things, for example, nowadays you have these agents, like AI agents that may assist with some tasks. But for people, when you're hiring, should you focus more on someone who's experienced, but it's gonna be expensive, or someone who is cheap but intelligent and can learn quickly over time?
Well, you know, the old what was it, Robert's laws or something, that when given a choice, take both. So like, you don't have to always pick one or the other. And it really, I think, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And when you hire somebody, you're making an investment, right? So where do you get the return on that investment? Like, how is that person going to help you, in theory, make more than what you're paying them, right? So if you can answer that question, then it, I think, doesn't necessarily matter whether you're getting somebody, you know, if you like need somebody to wear a sign, you know, outside of a tax thing, Statue of Liberty costume, where you don't need somebody very experienced, right? But if you're looking for somebody with specialized tax advice, I'd recommend somebody with experience, right? So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
I'll wrap up here with Ethos. I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
No, you're all good.
So I see him raising his hand and I feel bad. Ethos, so like what languages are being used to do like the mobile app and the back end, like the software engineering aspect of it? Yeah, we'll start there.
I think the mobile apps are written in C++. There's like a lot of JSON, so it's like 10% code, 90% config. So it's like a lot of config going on. And then we're using like Kubernetes on the back end for the tech modules components, and it's all in Google Cloud, which is like in you need to be really careful with Google Cloud because of like, you can get this algorithmic cost if you don't keep everything super under control. So yeah, it's really, really, really careful. And then the tokens themselves, they're all Ethereum based, standard smart contracts.
Also
So
Solidity.
yeah, Solidity.
And with that, I know compared to, let's say, Ledger, your private key is in that, Ledger itself, and you usually don't walk around with it, right?
Yep.
But with having, let's say, Ethos, it's on the phone.
Yep.
And you're talking about, for example, with how in third world developing countries, basically, one of the issue is amount of times there is theft and mobile phone theft.
Yep.
And I know I saw a couple of things about cloud backing and stuff like that. Have you guys looked into doing other things like ledgers as well, or like what's your solution and view?
So, the way crypto seeds work is they're just a set of, it's numeric code. And so whether you have it actually on your ledger or on your phone, it's still the same code. So people think, oh, I have my crypto on a ledger, but it's actually, that's not the case. You have a secret key, and that secret key can be written down or it could be stored in your ledger, or in our case, it's stored on the chipset. And it's actually really, you have an iPhone, right? So what's interesting about the iPhone is it's called the Secure Enclave. And it's a chip that Apple made specifically for storing data that's uncrackable, literally uncrackable. So it's separated from all the other components on the device, and then it's tamper-proof. So if you mess with it, it like wipes itself. And they actually had a standoff with the FBI because the FBI wanted to get the Secure Enclave. And Apple said, no, we won't let you in, and went all the way up to a big court case, and Apple stood their ground, which is kind of good for them. And they said, no, this is the one spot where nobody could ever get in except the user. And so it's like a super secure spot for storing data, and that's where we store the private key for Ethos, or the equivalent on Android, which is the TE, the trust execution environment. So they have something similar, not quite as secure, but still pretty good. And so we essentially turn the phone into a hardware. And I would argue at some level it's more secure than a ledger, because the ledger, you can have a backup or you can write it down, whatever. Here it's only stored on the device. If you want to pull it off, you pull it off, but you only pull off 2/3, so sharding. And then that's what's backed up, and then we keep the other shard and you can restore it. So yeah.
I'm cutting you off.
I'm done.
Jarvis.
So my question is about with the change of the regulation of the new administration, do you think there will be a decentralizations with traditional commercial banks? Because of, as you say, like we're skipping over the intermediate right now, at least in the international transaction business, the sector for the traditional commercial bank. What do you think about that?
Well, they already are a little decentralized in the sense that if you want to get around the $250,000 minimum protection, of assets, they have a system now where you can put a little bit in a whole bunch of banks so that you can actually decentralize your funds. It's not really decentralized, but you can diversify, let's say, your fund suite that's not all, held at one bank. So they sort of have that already. I think what you're going to see with regionals actually is you'll see tokenized assets more. And I think you're going to start to see regional stablecoins where you'll have like banks will start to issue stables backed by the reserves of the banks, and to give more liquidity to the assets and more liquidity for the banks themselves. That's why I think you'll see the first step.
Just a follow up, regional stable coin, you mean not backed by the dollar?
No, backed by the assets held in the regional banks.
Cool.
Yeah. And I've talked to a few people working on that. It's a really interesting space because then it opens up things like, again, like payments and remittances. And so those banks would have access to instantaneous borderless payments, and also being able to, I don't want to say leverage, but generate more liquidity on their reserves based by having their own regional stables. That's why I think you're going to start to see it. And that's a spot where I could see the regulatory framework being eased up a bit and having banks be able to do that.
Thanks.
Yeah.